Hey guys, MrPokke here, and today this is gonna be our final video covering the last two units combined into one regarding the upcoming reworks, this time for Blade as well as Jingliu, right? So just like the previous two videos, kindly refer to this video over here where I basically broke down every single one of the different exact changes that rework units are gonna be receiving in patch 3.4. I'm just gonna jump straight in and talk about what these changes do for specifically Blade and Jingliu's in-game performance for all of the endgame content, right? So in summary, both Blade and Jingliu, they are the version 1 DPS that have undergone a very similar scope of buffs, essentially turning them into HP scaling DPS in order to fit with the current scope of version 3 HP meta, right? With regards to the DPS as well as the support category, to a certain extent, you could look at Blade and Jingliu a little bit like alternate versions of My Day, which is a HP scaling DPS that wants Sunday's action value advance as well as the energy regeneration, right? So on top of the baseline changes to the HP scaling, some additional utilities they were also added alongside the original kit, mainly coming from the energy regeneration thresholds for both units. For Blade is gonna be his follow-up attack, for Jingliu is gonna be an enhanced skill, which ultimately improves the overall combat as well as feeling when you actually use them in battle, right? So for the character kit, like I mentioned, detailed look, check out this video. I'm gonna be splitting down into Blade and Jingliu respectively. Blade, in summary, completely removes the hybrid scaling from mixed attack into full-on HP scaling for his every single one of his basic, enhanced basic, follow-up attack, and ultimate, which is about damn time, right? Then his ultimate HP loss is going to be set to a 50% minimum for the health loss, and healing also converts to HP loss for the ultimate, albeit it's going to be at a 25% conversion with an additional 20% incoming heals. His follow-up attack also deals 20% more damage as well as granting him 15 more energy, while lastly his E1 increases the main target damage equals to 150% of the HP loss tally. And then for Jingliu, also receives the full conversion into HP percent scaling, and you basically remove every single one of the attack related buffs you can see from previous talent all the way into the crit damage focus buffs. So right now, Jingliu as a base kit, on top of the 50% crit rate, she also gains up to 220% crit damage in battle. The synergy or the enhanced skill stack, it went up from 2 to 3, and the cap went from 3 to 4 whenever you were to transform into the ultimate state. And at the max stat of 4 stacks, you can also ignore up to 25% of the enemy's defense, right? She also gains additional energy, so now her normal skill is gonna be 45 energy, and her enhanced skill is going to be giving 38 energy, right? Then the ultimate damage is going to have an additional 20% on top of the 35% effect rest, which in my opinion, I think the 35% effect rest doesn't really change too much, but I digress. The E1 crit damage increase a little bit more, and then you're now going to be dealing HP scaling additional damage, E4 for 20% crit damage, and E6 one more step from 4 to 5 with additional 30% rest pen, right? So that is pretty much most of the kits. I'm just going to talk about their builds first, and then I'll talk about their actual performances in battle. For most of the builds, they are relatively unchanged. Blade will continue to use your Longevous or your Longevous / 2-piece ego split if you already have enough crit rate, which is definitely not going to be too hard if you're going to be running him with Sunday, while Jingliu will continue to use the 4-piece Scholar, which most players will have farmed since version 2.7. The key difference being Jingliu now wants the 2-piece Bone set, and a lot of the main stats basically changed into a HP percentage, which in retrospect, if you have been using Tribi, if you have been using My Day, Casuals, all that kind of stuff, you probably do have a couple of bone sets lying around, right? Now, do note that for all of my testings in this entire B-rolls, and for the sake of my viewers who put the Blade's signature Lycon as well as Jingliu's signature Lycon back in the past, I only used Blade's S1 as well as Jingliu's S1 for my entire playthrough in this video, despite the fact that both of them's best in slot Lycon right now is actually going to be My Day's signature Lycon, right? Because Blade does have the healing as well as the HP loss tally, and Jingliu also has the additional way to generate synergy with the damage buffs easily hitting the 500 HP threshold. So despite that, I don't think anybody should be pulling a My Day Lycon specifically for Jingliu nor for Blade. But if you already have a My Day signature Lycon, be it you got like 2 different My Day S1s, then feel free to bring it over. Just know that essentially at the end of the day, Blade, Jingliu, My Day, for their builds as well as the team comp, they share a lot of similarities, right? So jumping into Blade's build over here first, honestly, there is nothing too much to say because it is pretty much going to be the exact same build, right? 4-piece Longevous, if you have enough crit rate, then go for the 2-piece Ego. 2-piece, Bone is going to be better than Rootalon. And for the Light Cone, My Day is rank 1, followed by Yunli, followed by Blade, Synergy, Light Cone. For your main stat, you do want to hit the Speed Boots if you're going to be pairing up with a slow Sunday, crit damage, HP, and then for the subset, you can go for the double crit into HP, right? So really nothing much to say. You can pretty much just use the exact same as it is. If you do have a HP percent body, you can consider using that instead of crit damage if you have enough good crit subsets. Now for Jingliu, on the other hand, the main stats as well as the subsets, there are going to be quite a bit of changes. 4-piece is going to be completely the same as Scholar, whereas for the 2-piece, you do want to start using your 2-piece Bone from your Casuaries domain, or if you already have a pretty decent Rootalon, you can continue with that. And for the Light Cone, it's going to be My Day over Jingliu's signature Light Cone. And then for the main stat, it's just going to be speed, followed by HP. Yeah, she just want to slam all in HP because she gains so many crit damage buff within her base kit, as well as Sunday buffing up her crit damage. And for the subsets, crit damage over HP, because chances are she is not going to be needing that much crit rate, especially if you were to run her with units like Sunday, right? So I also took the liberty over here where I compared the HP body into the crit damage body. You can see from these numbers over here, for the HP body, it is going to be coming out on top compared to crit damage at roughly 5.5% better for the ultimate, as well as 2% better for the enhanced skill with the subsets as shown over here, right? And you can see over here for Jingliu, HP is gonna be ideal because Sunday and her personal crit damage buff is absolutely insane, hitting almost 600% crit damage in combat when I was already using a HP damage body, which leads to a decreased impact on running a crit damage body instead. This is also important if you do want to use My Day's signature Light Cone with Jingliu. You really want to hit at least at 8,334 HP in order to proc the 500 HP drain threshold for the additional damage, right? So that is gonna be that for the build. And now jumping into team building, the current best in slot team for Blade is unironically the same as Jingliu, which is partly why I combined both Blade and Jingliu into the same video, because it's almost the same photo. So for Tribi and Hyacinth, these two are going to be our baseline foundations, where you're going to be getting the sustains, the HP buff, the damage, the follow-up attacks, and then Sunday is going to be the glue that binds both of them together, giving them a tremendous amount of action value as well as energy, right? For most of the version 1 and version 2 supports, they are not really focused on HP scaling DPS, either giving a unneeded attack percentage buff from Robin, Tingwin, Bronya, or action value delay from Rame, which is going to be considered as anti-synergistic, or if you're just going to be shilling for Surik running HMC or Fugue, right? So if you do have a couple of alternatives in mind, if you do not have the version 3 supports, so for example, Sparkle could be an alternative to Sunday, but Sunday simply performs the job way better, both in terms of action value, which is how fast you're going to be clearing the combat, as well as the energy regeneration, which is going to be very, very important, especially for Jingliu. Maybe one day Sparkle can better buff, who knows, right? Looking forward to the next patch. And then for RMC, you could also consider that for the true damage buff, as well as making use of Hyacinth's signature Light Cone if players do have a copy of that lying around, but the lack of energy would also be very annoying. Same thing for Sunday, especially for Jingliu. She really wants the additional energy regeneration to hit the 4 stacks of Synergy, which gives you 25% defense penetration, right? Realistically, Run Mei, you could use her to replace your Tribi, but the performance will be noticeably worse, especially since both of them really wants to get hit, and her break efficiency and extend is basically anti-synergistic for both HP scaling DPSs that wants the enemy to give them as much damage as possible, right? For the sustain slot, Huo could replace Hyacinth, especially for the energy regeneration buff, but the 40% attack is going to be completely useless right now, and her lack of access to Hyacinth's S1 would lead to lesser stack generation, particularly for Blade. Not as much for Jingliu, but definitely noticeable on Blade as well as follow-up attacks, right? One bonus segment specific to Jingliu, she actually worked really well with the upgraded Silver Wolf. At E0 S0, she was considered a viable side grade to Tribi, especially against non-ice weak stages with the added defense down percentage, because Jingliu herself also has quite a decent chunk of defense down or defense penetration, right? So if players do want to use Tribi in the other team, consider running the upgraded Silver Wolf alongside with a Jingliu, especially if you really put for her back in the past. And at the end of the day, this is why I felt that two of them, they were basically like a version 1 DPS that didn't really age that well with the passage of time. They've transitioned into like a My Days side grade, playing with the exact same team comp, the exact same objective of team building, which is to give you more HP, more turns, more damage taken, as well as getting more energy so that you can rotate your entire rotations a lot faster, right? So that is pretty much it for the team building. And now jumping into the performance, all of the testings, they were done on full auto, which turned out pretty well given their very simplistic nature, and there wasn't too big of a disparity aside from like maybe I want to save my ultimate a little bit here and there, but nothing too crazy, right? I basically ran all of them at E0 as 1's DPS. Remember, I did use Blade and Jingliu's signature light cone, not My Days. E0 S0 Tribi on Dansan Suns, E0 S1 Hyacinth, as well as a E0 S1 Sunday. Baseline multiplier wise, I did observe that their damage has substantially increased compared to the version 1 counterparts, with better relics and vertical investments in things like E1 Tribi or their respective E1 eidolons. I can expect very nice performances across the endgame content, but I would want to say for Blade and Jingliu, they do have their weaknesses in respect to pure fiction as well as Epoch Shadows, right? Because Blade does favor pure fiction a lot more and Jingliu favors Epoch Shadows a lot more. So all in all, I would say that their performances, they were roughly around the same in Memory of Chaos. Blade does far better in pure fiction and Jingliu does far better in Epoch Shadows. And if you do want to get, for example, E1 Tribi, maybe E1 Hyacinth, all that kind of stuff, you can definitely consider their upgrades to be substantial, right? So I'll talk about Blade's endgame performance. As you guys can see from this table over here, Blade's stack generation for follow-up attacks goes up considerably, with Hyacinth on the signature light cone, massively improving the follow-up attack frequency, which in turn led to more ultimates, which also received the higher damage multiplier with the added HP tally towards the HP loss, right, on top of the baseline 50% HP loss percentage. So this is why I would say across mainly the endgame content, specifically to Memory of Chaos and Pure Fiction, Blade's performance was very nice, almost getting us the full auto 40k in Pure Fiction for a version 1 DPS, right? Sunday's value, it was very obvious from the sheer number of turns as well as energy that he was able to provide Blade throughout the different phases. But do note that for this particular team, they are very weak to enemies with action value delays, such as Savrok's beam cannons, and if you were to push back your Sunday or Blade, then it's gonna basically ruin our speed tuning and essentially waste one entire turn worth of damage, and losing one extra turn on Blade, or in this case even Jingliu, is gonna be a substantial DPS loss, because not only do you lack access to the turn damage itself, you also lack access to the energy, which is where a lot of their damage is gonna be coming from, right? So that is gonna be that. For Blade's follow-up attack, it's gonna be having a very strong multiplier while working alongside with Tribi's mechanic, because Tribi's mechanic is the higher the number of targets you hit with your DPS, then the faster Tribi can generate her own energy as well as casting her ultimate a little bit faster, right? So Blade and Tribi's synergy, especially in Pure Fiction, it was really nice, where we almost managed to manage the 40k on full auto, right? Unfortunately for Epoch Shadow's Doomsday Beast, despite the wing weaknesses as well as the follow-up attack buff, he struggled a lot more since there weren't any mobs for Blade to deal with, and one could say Blade is like a DPS tailored more towards your AoE content, while Jingliu is a DPS that's tailored more towards a 3-target, 2-target, or maybe even 1-target content, right? So that is gonna be that for Blade. And then looking at Jingliu's performance over here, you can see this is gonna be one of, in my opinion, the biggest changes for Jingliu, because for the longest time, a lot of players, if you were to run out of gas for Jingliu, where you leave the ultimate stage, you're gonna be suffering a massive damage downtime. But this is no longer the case anymore, because I can say with full confidence, she can now maintain a 100% ultimate state uptime, and not only that, she's almost at full ultimate frequency for the max stats of Siji, granting her the 25% defense penetration a lot more frequently than I expected. Because if you want to think about it, back in version 1, I almost always run out of Jingliu's ultimates, especially going towards version 2 into version 3 when HP inflation and everything went up. But nowadays, with this buff, I've never ever exited Jingliu's ultimate ever, and with the combination of Sunday, we can get this ultimate at the 25% defense down very comfortably, right? So I do believe that 100% uptime on the ultimate. It is still possible without Sunday because you can see my synergy stacks, they were almost kept at 4, but lagging the energy would mean having less access to the 25% defense ignore skill attachment. So that is gonna be there. While Jingliu's skill synergizes very well with the version trees, it does feel kind of bad that we no longer can effectively use a team alongside with units like Robin as well as Ting previously for the action value manipulations alongside with our Sparkle or Sunday, right? For Jingliu's damage against the main targets, they were noticeably higher, but she falls off especially hard in pure fiction. So unfortunately, this buff cannot save her in the environments where you want to deal against high AoE mob-based content, right? So with that, we have pretty much come to a quick little conclusion and summary. Both Blade and Jingliu's performances, they definitely improved quite a lot compared to version 1, closer towards a pseudo version 3 standard and falls behind a true version 3 DPS roster. Now this is definitely impacted by making both Blade and Jingliu more synergistic with the version 3 supports and less so their individual buffs in a vacuum. I would feel that even though the buffs have definitely helped out both of these units by a little bit, a lack of access to the key pillars in the team, noticeably Tribi and Hyacinth's S1, it would have drastically reduced their performance in all of our endgame content. It felt more impactful for players who already invested in the version 3 support and sustains but have yet to pull for any version 3 DPS, such as for example Mighty and Casters. Now you would have the opportunity to save the pools that you have otherwise spent to experience a version 3 HP scaling DPS by reusing these version 1 DPS in tandem with Tribi as well as Hyacinth if you already pull for them in the past, right? That being said, I would never really advise anyone to pull specifically for post-buff Blade and post-buff Jingliu because of the buffs as well as the upcoming reruns that's going to be approaching, right? Their performances, despite the buffs, are nowhere near tier 0 category in my opinion, which means that they are not going to be considered as an improvement over any version 3 DPS within this patch of 3.4 as well as I guess in the entire version 3. If you want to talk about the most potential DPS with prospects to grow, I would say Herta, Castris as well as the upcoming Phynon, they do show the highest potential for any of the DPSs, be it HP or not HP scaling, right? And at the end of the day, if you do want to run Jingliu and Blade, their best in slot would still require you to have the pieces in order to make them work in the first place, namely your version 3 supports, right? So your vertical investments into your version 3 supports or version 3 sustains, they are fundamentally tied towards both Blade and Jingliu's performances for all of our endgame content. And if you do want to use them without the version 3s, then even though we did receive the buffs, I wouldn't expect anything crazy coming out into like tier 0 category, right? So with that, we have pretty much come to the end of a very quick and simple short summary for both Blade and Jingliu's summaries buffs upcoming in version 3.4. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and afterwards I will be seeing you guys in a couple of Zero Cycle showcases. Not sure if I'm putting out my final Zero showcase, whatever it's gonna be, but that's gonna be there. So word of the day is gonna be Barrack. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join to the use code BO 10%, use code BO 10%. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.